Hi everyone. Welcome to the Getting Started with Conga Composer webinar. This webinar is part of our ongoing webinar series, and it's intended to introduce you to key capabilities of Conga Composer to get you off and running. My name is Ashley Green, and I'll be taking you through this session today. Before we get started, let's do a little housekeeping. The entire webinar is slated to last about 30 minutes. Including 5 minutes for Q&A at the end. We do have a lot of registrants, so everyone's phones will be on mute. If you do have questions, please submit them online. We may not get to all of your questions, but we'll answer as many as we can during the session. Any questions that we don't get to will be answered in an FAQ that we'll be posting to our knowledge base. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll make that recording available within a few days on our YouTube channel and on our knowledge base as well. So let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, in today's session, we're going to take you through setting up your first Conga Composer solution. We're going to assume that you're basically familiar with Salesforce.com and know how to do things such as create reports. The steps that we'll be going through today is first setting up a new button and adding that button to our page layout. Once we've done that, we're going to customize a template so you can see how you can control the contents of the documents that you're generating. Then we'll use the template manager to make the experience easier for your end users. Once we have that functioning basic solution, we'll start adding parameters, and we can use these to further control the behavior of the solution. Finally, we'll show you how to set a default template so that you can control what templates your users have access to, and then we'll talk about what else can I use Conga for. With that, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go into my Salesforce org, and we're going to start working with this contact. With Conga Composer, you start the solution from one of your objects, in this case a contact. But you can also use it for accounts, leads, opportunities, cases, whatever is appropriate. When you do so, the information that's associated with that record will automatically be available to your solution. And so that's the basic set of information that we call the master data set, which you can use for creating your documents. Let's go ahead and start working on our solution. What we're going to do is go into Setup, Customize, and then the object that we're working on, which is Contacts, we're going to go to Buttons, Links, and Actions. When you install Conga Composer, a sample button is created for you. Let's take a look at that. This button contains what we call the base URL. And the base URL is the basic set of information that's necessary to start Conga Composer. What we're going to do is copy this to our clipboard and create a brand new button with it. Let's go ahead and label this, and we'll call this Getting Started Test. We then paste in our base URL. Once we've done that, you have the option of deciding how Conga Composer is going to look to your end users. It could be deployed as a link or as a button. The link saves you screen real estate. The button simply makes it more visible. We're going to go ahead and select button. And with that, we already have all of the basic information we need to run a Composer solution. When I go to save it, notice that you do have to make this button available on the page layout. And that's what we're going to do next. We're going to go back to our contacts. And now we're going to go to Edit Page Layout. We'll go to our buttons, and we'll take this Getting Started Test button and make it available. We'll get rid of that button since we're not using it. And there we go. We can now start Conga Composer simply by pressing this Getting Started Test button, and we get a basic vanilla implementation of Conga Composer. We can go in and select a local template, and we'll choose one that I already have created, and it's this member welcome letter. Then to run the solution, I just press merge. Now the basic template is being merged with information taken from Salesforce.com to create this document. And this document only has one merge field, which is this University of Arizona, and the rest of it is just plain text. But basically, that's how you run a Conga Composer solution. But now let's go in and start to do some customizations to make it look and behave the way that we want it to. I'm going to close out of the document and go back to our buttons. I'm going to go back to contacts, and this time I'm going to cheat. I'm not the greatest typist in the world, so rather than going in and typing in every parameter from scratch, I've already pre-created a Getting Started button, and it has listed the parameters that we're going to work with. As you can see, we have our base URL, and the master object is identified by this ID field, which is our contact. And like I said, when we're running the solution, by default you have access to the information that's available from that master object. But one of the nice things about Conga Composer is you can pull information from any object. One of the ways that you can do that is by creating a report that specifies the information that you want to work with and making that available to Conga Composer. And that's the purpose of this AMPER report ID parameter. Let's take a look at a report. I've created a basic cases report, and this report has some information about the different cases, but the key thing about it is each one of these cases is associated with an end user. What I'm going to do is filter this report based on that contact ID, and that's going to limit the set of information that's provided to that's going to limit the information that's provided to Conga Composer to the contact that I'm working with. That's done via this filter, which we call PV0 or parameter value 0. If you set it to contact ID equals to blank, when you run Conga Composer, it will then be filtered by the master object that you're running it from. So let's go ahead and copy the Salesforce ID for this report, and I'm going to add it to our report ID. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and save this. And before I do that, let me go back and point out something. One of the challenges when you're working with Conga Composer is to make sure that you don't have spaces at the end of any of your parameters. And the reason for this is spaces in a URL will lead to 404 errors. So it's a best practice to go in and check at the end of each line and make sure that there are no extraneous spaces. These blanks here don't count because they're actually character returns, and those are fine. So I'm now going to go ahead and save this button. We are good to go, and I will go back to our contacts record. I'm going to go back to Jane Gray, and I'm going to start up, I'm going to go back and make that button available. I'll get rid of our test button, and I'll save it. Now by pressing Getting Started, we are starting Conga Composer. Now, before we go much further, as I mentioned, when we run the solution, we now have access to report ID information. And how do we get access to that? When you want to customize your own templates, we have a tool that we call the Template Builder. And what the Template Builder does is it makes all of the fields that are accessible to your solution visible for you. So these are all the contact fields. And this report data is actually the information that comes from our report. Now let's go ahead and do some customizations to our template. I already have a sample template that I've created that we can work with. and it's this Getting Started letter. As you can see, it has some fields that have already been created for you, some basic merge fields that have already been added. But we're going to add some of our own. The first thing that we're going to want to do is to address this letter to the contact. So we're going to add their first name. And the way that we do that is by taking information from the template builder. We're going to go back to the master record. And in the template builder, you have the ability to filter based on the field that you want to work with. And so I'm looking for first name. I filter based on first. I then click on that name, and it's copied to our clipboard. Now I can add it as a merge field. There are a couple of different ways that you can do that. First, you can use the mouse by going to Insert, Quick Parts, Field, typing the letter M twice for mail merge, and pasting in the field. This creates a Microsoft Word merge field, and this is where the information will be placed coming from Conga Composer. And what we've done is add this first name field from the master record. But since we also have the report information available, we're going to use some of that as well. What I'll do is go to Report Data, and I'm looking for the case subject and the case status. So I'm going to set the subject, and this time I'm going to add it using the keyboard. In the key sequence, Alt, I, F, M, M, tab to the field name, and I'll paste it in. And that adds that as a merge field. I'll now do the same thing with status, and you can see how quickly you can do that. And we've added that. Now, since these fields don't come from the master data set, it's necessary to tell Conga Composer where this information is coming from. And that's the purpose of the table start and table end fields. These identify the source of the information between those two fields. They kind of act as bookends. So I'm going to start with the table start, and I'm going to add that before subject. Then I will do the same thing with table end. And there we go. Another thing that I'm going to do is kind of a best practice, and that is, since the table start and the table end aren't displayed, I'm going to highlight them in red so I can see, number one, where they are. And this is very useful for debugging purposes. And that's it. I'm now going to go ahead and save our updated template, close it out, and I'm going to run our solution one more time. I'll do a refresh since we made some changes to the URL, and I'll run our solution. Once again, I'm going to go find the template that I'm working with, which is the Getting Started letter, and I'll perform the merge. Now information is being pulled from both the master record as well as that report. Now when I run our solution, you can see that we have information that is pulled from the master record, the name, and this case information which is pulled as well. Okay, we now have a functioning solution. Let's do some more customizations. Conga Composer provides well over 150 parameters that you can use to customize the behaviors of your solution. And we're going to show you a few of those parameters right now. We're going to go back to our button and go back to our Getting Started, and we'll edit it. When you're working with Conga Composer, by default, the document that's generated is the same format as your template. So for example, in this case, we're working with the Microsoft Word template, so the document that's generated is going to be Microsoft Word as well. But there might be circumstances that you don't want that to be the case. Say, for example, you're generating a quote. You don't want that to be editable by the person that you're sending it to. So Conga Composer also makes it possible for you to determine the output format. We have a couple of parameters that allow you to do that. The first is default PDF, and what that will do is set the output style to Adobe Acrobat. It will allow the user to change it to Word if they want to, but it'll set it there by default. We have a second parameter, which is the one that I'm going to use this time, and that is FP0. If you set that equal to 1, it will lock the output format to Adobe Acrobat, and it can't be changed. Another thing that we might want to do is to name our document. When you generate a document with Conga Composer, it'll create a name for you based on the template that you're working with and the object that you're working with. But you might have a more specific name that you want to use for your own purposes, and that's what we're going to do here. In this case, we're creating a thank you letter, so let's go ahead and title this as Thank You Letter. And let's go ahead and add in the name of our contact so we can personalize it just a little bit. So when this document is generated, it will be named Thank You Letter for, and then the first name of our contact that we use to start Conga Composer. You'll notice these pluses in here, and these are used as a convention to prevent there being spaces in the URL. Once again, that can cause a 404 error. So when Conga Composer sees these, it'll render these as spaces even though they're not spaces in the URL. Let's go ahead and save this, and let's try running our solution again. We'll go back to Contacts and Jane, and we'll run the solution. Now, as you'll notice, it is now locked to PDF. And when I merge the document, we're going to get the document exactly the same as it was generated before. But now the difference is, number one, it's going to be named Thank You Letter for, and then Jane's name is put there. So as you can see, you can use these parameters to start controlling how your solution actually behaves. Let's do a little bit more customization. We're going to go back into our contact, and now what we're going to do is do some activity logging. Each time you generate a document, you might want to keep track of what's going on, but you don't want to do that manually. The activity logging parameters allow you to do that. The first one is LG4. It's simply a toggle that turns activity logging on and off. If you set it equal to 1, the rest of the activity logging parameters will be functional. Next, you might want to set a subject for that activity. And we'll just call this letter generated for, and then we'll add that last name again. That first name again. You might also want to set follow-up activities, and you can do that as well. LG2 is a field that allows you to set the follow-up date for a certain number of days in the future. Setting LG2 equal to 7 will set a follow-up date for 7 days into the future. And then finally, you might want to have a name for that follow-up. And we can just call this and we'll add that name one more time. So the title for this follow-up will be follow-up with, and then the name of the contact. I'll go ahead and save that, and we'll run our solution again. I'll press the Getting Started. Composer comes up, and now you'll notice that activity logging is turned on, the subject is already set for us, and the follow-up date is set. The final thing to do is to merge the document and see our activities. So once again, the document's being generated as a PDF, and once the process is complete, we can go in and take a look at our contact record. We're not going to look at the document because we've already seen that a couple of times. But now, if I go and I look at this record, you can see that an activity has been generated. We have a follow-up set and a follow-up date. So the activity logging is a powerful way of being able to keep track of what's going on within your solution. There's another set of parameters that are outside of the scope of what we're doing today that you can actually use to update regular data fields within Salesforce, and that's called master field to set. It gives you the ability to go in and update individual fields by specifying them in your Conga Composer parameter list. So if you want to learn more about that, go to our knowledge base and look for master field to set. Okay, so we now have your basic functioning solution. We've gone ahead and created our new button. We've set the output parameters. We've updated it to take information from a report as well as our master data set, and we're logging activities with Salesforce. The final thing that we might want to do is to simplify the solution for our end user even further. We're going to go back into Customize. We'll go into Contacts, and we will go into Buttons and Links. Now what we're going to want to do is to work with a Conga Composer template. To do that, we're going to open up our Conga Templates tab. And the templates are repositories for, or the template records are repositories for our templates. So what we're going to do is to create a new template record and make that available to our solution. So what I'm going to do is create a new Conga template, and we'll call this Getting Started Template. I'll go ahead and save that. And now what I'll do is I'll attach our template record. Once that's attached, this Getting Started template will be available to our Conga Composer solution. Another thing that we might want to do is, rather than have the user have to pick that solution, we can have it default to this template. And we can do that with the template ID parameter. What I do is copy this Salesforce ID. I'll go back to our solution one more time and edit it and add this template ID. Now when I save it and run our solution, not only will this Getting Started template be available, but it will also be selected by default. And now when we run the solution, you'll see that we have a new template that's available, this Getting Started template, and it's selected automatically. This is useful once again to simplify the experience of your end users so they don't have to search amongst a list of templates which you might potentially have. By the way, you see this choosing the template from your local computer? This is something that's only available to your administrators. So making it easy for your users to get to the templates is a useful thing to do, and that template ID parameter makes it possible for you to do that. And there we have it, a functioning solution from the very beginning. Once again, what we've done is we've created a new button, we've controlled its behavior, we've specified our data source, we've done some activity logging, and we've simplified the experience of the end user, all in about 20 minutes. That's pretty good. So what's next? Well, one of the things that it's important to realize is that even though we just used Conga Composer for a simple thank you letter, there's a whole variety of uses that you can put the tool to. If you go to our Conga Composer home page, and I will do that for you here, go to Support, oops, and I'll go to Use Cases, you can see there's a variety of other types of solutions that you can use. Account plans, contracts, pre-filled forms, proposals, quotes, a whole variety of things that you can do. If you want to learn more about these different options, if you go to our home page and go to Use Cases, you can go to each one of these and click on them and find out more information about these different types of solutions that you can accomplish with Composer. We think you'll find it pretty useful, and we think you'll find it pretty powerful. With that, I think we've touched on the topics that I wanted to cover. Let's see what kind of questions we have. Okay, the first question was that it says that I've mentioned 150 parameters. Where can I find out more about those parameters? Well, you can do that by going back to our support site. So if you go to Conga Merge and go to support, you'll notice, number one, that you have access to our knowledge base. And we have over 600 articles here, but one of the most popular ones is this index of Conga Composer parameters. If you click here, you'll get a list of all the different types of parameters that are available. If you click on one, you'll be brought to a page which describes the contents or the behaviors of that particular parameter. If you're interested in learning about different types of parameters, like say you're a DocuSign user and you wanted to learn more about DocuSign parameters, all you need to do is go to this categories, click on DocuSign, and you can see a list of the different parameters that are available for that type of solution. Okay. The next question was, I need to generate a bunch of documents. Does that mean I have to click on each button, on this button, on each one of those contact records? And the answer to that is actually no. We have a tool that we call Conga Mail Merge that is sent along with Conga Composer. And what Conga Mail Merge makes it possible to do is to mass generate documents based on parameters of your own. Conga Mail Merge is included with Conga Composer. And even though the button is hidden here, you can see that you can be brought to Conga Mail Merge, and you can make it visible on the tab. And from here, you're taken through a wizard which helps you through the process of mass creating those documents. You can learn more about that by going to the Conga Mail Merge Wizardry webinar that's in our webinar archive, and you'll be brought through how to use Conga Mail Merge. In addition to that, we have a second tool, which is a separate tool, called Conga Conductor. In Conga Conductor, one-ups Mail Merge in a few ways. With Mail Merge, you can generate documents for printing. But with Conga Conductor, you can also generate emails, and in addition to that, you can automate this and schedule the delivery of those documents where you don't have to take any manual steps at all. You can say on the third Friday of each month, generate these account plans for me and email them out to whoever. And Conga Conductor makes that possible for you. So it's a very powerful tool, one that I recommend that you take a look at. Let's see. There's another question. What other types of documents can I generate besides Word documents? Conga Composer supports Microsoft Word, as you've seen, Adobe PDF, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint, and HTML email templates. So you can generate a wide variety of types of documents for a wide variety of types of uses, and Conga Composer can help meet all of those needs for you. Okay, and with that, we're just about out of time. And so there are a few other things that I wanted to point out for you before we go. First, there's a whole variety of resources that are available for you to help you get started. If you go to our knowledge base and search for the term Quick Start, you'll be brought to a list of what we call our Quick Start tutorials. And these help you get started learning how to use our different tools. They're a combination of video and PDF to take you through those different steps. We also have an error message archive, which can help you debug error messages when they occur. And we have the webinar archive, which contains all of those different webinars that I was just mentioning. We have a webinar registration link, which obviously you found if you're in this session. And we also have a template library. This template library is a collection of sample templates, which gives you ideas of different things that you can do with Conga Composer, and you can actually use these templates as the basis for your own solutions. We have our documentation, which is available on the website and from within the knowledge base. And then finally, we have a YouTube channel, which contains a collection of videos that you might find useful. I mentioned that we have a series of webinars, and this webinar is part of that webinar series. But in addition to that, we have one that takes you through some of our key parameters. We have ones that take you through different template types such as Word and PowerPoint. We have a session, or we have different sessions, I should say, for the different e-signature solutions, EchoSign, DocuSign, and Certify. We have a session for nonprofits, a session that introduces you to using SOQL queries, which is an alternate way of pulling information into your solutions. So a whole variety of resources that we think you might find useful. So by all means, take a look at our webinar archive, and I think you'll be pleased with what you find there. And with that, we are just about done. I wanted to thank everyone for attending and reiterate that you'll be receiving a follow-up email with links to the agenda, the recording, and the FAQs. Once again, you can also just go to the knowledge base and search for the term archive. This session is part of our webinar series, and as a result of that, this session will be available in that archive as well. I think that's it. So as always, please be sure to let us know what you think. We appreciate you taking the time to look at this. And everyone, do have a great day.